It is time to get tech, and of the many subjects on discussion on this week's show, we've got one guy looking to straighten himself up and another who is looking for a new bolt-on. And we're diving in with 60 seconds of Stevens. Chris, what's the question there?
He's saying, ask EMBN, any tips to set my handlebars completely straight when they turn in the stem so they're in line with the forks? Cheers, Joe. Really enjoyed the channel and the split ring sounded sore. Nice.
Yeah, the split ring issue.
We'll
continue that discussion on another occasion. But getting straightened up, Chris, pretty straightforward, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, basically just need to undo those stem bolts and just try and twist the stem in line with the front tire. I tend to try and lean on something. I tighten it up slightly so there's a bit of resistance on there and just line it up. Just looking either with the handlebars in line with the fork crown or just the stem directly in line with the front tire. You got any tips?
I usually do it sat on the bike with Allen keys, sit on the bike, straighten it up, line it up, maybe use your foot. Ow! Crikey! Didn't mean to do that. You use your foot or use a tree to lever against on the front wheel. It's as simple as that, really.
It is annoying though. Sometimes you feel like it is going off to the side, but yeah, it's just trial and error. Just get set with it.
Chris, I reckon you need to do a how-to on that. Moving on to Lloyd Godden, who's asking about these aftermarket bolt-on kits.
Yeah, I have a 2006 Scott Nitrous 10 kicking about in the shed, which hasn't been used for years. Instead of letting it sit around neglected, would it be worth giving it a new lease of life by converting it to a mid-drive eMTB? Any advice on what the best kit to go for and how much would it roughly cost?
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be the Bafang kit, right, Chris?
Yeah, Bafang kit. I had a quick look online.
There is so many options. Many options. I mean, you've got options on what motor to get. You can get like 250 watt, 500 watt. You can even get, I think, 1,000 watt and 1,500 watts.
Yeah, different size batteries, different ways you carry them, frame mounted, backpack mounted.
Yeah.
So many options out there, literally. But
I think one option what you need to bear in mind is there is a 25k restriction in the UK and other countries. So depending where you come from, Lloyd, bear that in mind.
I was going to say how the power is delivered as well. It could be throttle assist or pedal assist. So try and both. You can get kits which actually do both. So that'd probably be something I'd look into. Yeah. But for a few £100, there's a load of options out there on eBay. You know, for under £500.
There's probably can get some for £450, but there's also others there for about £1,000.
Yeah.
So it depends how much you want to dive into it. But really quiet motors and a fantastic displays on those bikes. So yeah, plenty of options to upgrade your mountain bike to an e-mountain bike.
Now, the bikes we ride here at EMBN are incredibly sophisticated systems. The fully integrated motor, battery and chassis have been created not just out of the best design and best materials, they're very efficient. However, the bikes we ride don't actually come cheap, but there are alternative ways to avoid that significant cost involved in buying that mountain bike, and that is by converting your existing mountain bike to an e-bike by way of these retrofit mid-drive motors, which I mentioned earlier.
This comes in from not for me. Do I need a different chain checker for my 12-speed? The Vitus Summit E is showing very little wear after 6 months of light use. I know the chain and cassette being NX Eagle is pretty durable, being mostly steel, but I just wondered if I can keep using my 11-speed park chain checker.
So the difference between 11 and 12 speed chains is actually the only difference is the width of the chains. The actual chain pitch is the same. So an 11 speed chain checker will be absolutely fine on a 12 speed chain.
Oh, crikey. Right, I learned something there today. Pendo. Now, Pendo, hi. You guys have done some epic rides. What safety communication devices do you take? Does it vary with the areas you go to? Say, Specialized Angie in mobile phone coverage areas, or EPIRB, where no coverage is available. We have done some pretty epic trips. In terms of safety communication,
we do have a big crew normally, don't we? Well, we say a big crew, but
it's actually difficult to know whether there's going to be communication or not. I think it all comes down to the preparation before a trip. You need to know. You need to get a get-out clause, I think, more than anything. You need to, if you're going to go up a mountain pass, need to know if there's low cloud conditions, you know how to get out of there. You need to know your route pretty well. You need to phone people, some local experts about this. I mean, when me and Josh and Hannah Barnes did our trip into Knoydart, we actually checked that out with several landowners and mountain bike guiding experts in the area before, and they actually told us to take a flare with us when we went into the mountains. So it's also about looking after yourselves and doing the right things on
the right
route
places as well,
and not to put yourselves into risk. And I think the biggest thing when you're going on adventures is mountain weather and how changeable it is. So like I said, you need a get out clause from your route if things get a bit sketchy.
Definitely a lot of prep before you get there, right?
Absolutely.
Next one is from Bob Bobby. He's saying, I always find myself apologising for cruising past ordinary mountain bikes out on the trails. I usually make a joke. What do you guys do? Well, I just try and cruise past. I don't come flying up behind them or go, overtaking them super close at 100 miles an hour. Just try and give them a bit of wide berth, acknowledge them, and on the route, might get ready for a bit of a, someone shouting something at you, cheat, or the usual stuff, but whatever. Cruise on.
Answer the question, Bob Bobby, and actually we do appreciate your comments on all the videos we do on EMBN. I'm going to throw you to the video we've done on trail etiquette.
When it comes to climbing at different speeds on normal bikes, it's common courtesy to let the rider know you're there, but also let them know which side you're going to pass on if possible. And the same applies to e-bikes really. By all means, let the slower rider know you're there, but it's maybe better till there's a space on the side of the trail before you make a move to overtake.
Okay, Mr. Ezzy, he's saying, EMBN, I'm thinking about getting the new High Bike Extra Enduro, but how much does it actually weigh?
Well, that depends if you're talking about the Bosch or Yamaha version, which comes in around about 23 kilos, or indeed the new Fly-On bikes, which are more towards the 28 kilo mark. So yeah, that's it. But don't forget to think about how the suspension works on your e-mountain bike as well, because you do need a progressive tune, which makes that bike quite manoeuvrable.
So Scuzz Monster, he's asking, tubeless or tubes? I tried tubeless once, made a right mess of myself on the kitchen floor. My missus went mad. How do you guys not get any punctures?
Well, Chris, I mean, can you ever prevent not having punctures?
I don't think so. It's part of the game, isn't it?
Part of the game. There's many points to this question, actually. The first one is if you want to prevent punctures, I'd suggest you go for a heavy sidewall tyre, which is probably about, tyres are about 1 kilo with that thick sidewall. The second point is tubed or tubeless. I'd go tubeless, Chris, myself. And I think if you look at the majority of World Cup downhill racers, who probably the hardest charging riders in the world, they mostly go for tubeless. But on an e-mountain bike, I think the perfect setup is go tubeless and then carry a tube if you have to change it in the field. However, you have to change it in the kitchen like you've done, and I've got to agree, it is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I think the technology has actually moved on a lot more as well. Tubeless setup. I mean, we've got proper style pumps now. The tyre technology is a lot more evolved than it was in the early days. So I reckon give it another shot and you might be surprised. And Wheelie Bad, he's saying, I've had my new Kenevo for 2 weeks now. Best bike he's ever had, by the way. Gears shift fine, shifting down the cassette, but when I go for the easier gears, it doesn't want to select. It's clicking and grinding. What's going on?
Well, that's got to be a simple answer, right? I mean, maybe your back wheel's loose.
Could be that, or
maybe when your linkages is loose. No. Maybe your wheel's loose. Maybe your gears aren't set up correctly.
Yeah, it's good.
Chris is your man on gears.
Cable stretch, I would guess, if it's a new bike. Sometimes the cable will stretch when it's new. All you need to do is just adjust a little barrel adjuster on the end of the shifter, just increase that tension a little bit on there, then try shifting up the gears. So that should actually rectify the problem.
Isn't there a video on setting up your rear mech?
You've done that one, haven't you?
Now we adjust our rear mechs by changing 2 things. Our cable tension, which affects how the chain moves from one gear to another, and our limit screws, which affect how the derailleur sits at its outer extremities.
Old Jiggly J fitted new pads to my Lapierre, but they don't seem as powerful as they were at first. Any tips for getting the initial power back? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends obviously why you've replaced the pads. Were they worn out or were they contaminated? If they were contaminated with like spray lube or something like that, then that might still be on the rotor as part of the process. You need to actually clean the rotor and replace the pads, do it all as one. Otherwise, if you put clean pads on a dirty rotor, you're just going to contaminate them again. So that could be my guess. The brakes need to be silent. A really good way of finding out a contaminated disc is actually with it like howling away when you pull the back brake on.
Howling
like
what about bleeding the brake? Is this something to do with that?
Bleeding, yeah. sometimes if the lever's traveling really close to the handlebars, could be a bleed as well, but my bet is that it's probably contaminated. So just make sure you bedded them in properly. Any bedding in tips? How do you bed your pads in?
I don't know, but I'd go for the cleaning up the system first approach before bedding in. How do I bed mine in? Yeah, actually good point. That's part of the answer, right?
Yeah,
you've got to sort of go on a bit of a downhill section or flat section. A bit of break in, release. Bit of break in, release. Not go charging into a downhill section and anchor those brakes up because
glaze up.
That's going to glaze it.
I try and just add a little bit of water to the mix as well. Clean water actually accelerates that whole process a lot more. There you go. That's it for this week's Ask EMBN show. Don't forget, if you guys got any questions you want to ask us, hashtag Ask EMBN, drop us them in the box below and we'll get back to you ASAP.
But also, don't forget involved in the conversations. If you've got any feedback on some of the things we've said, let us know as well in those comments.
Don't forget to click on the globe to subscribe to EMBN, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week.